All right, welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fixed Ops Mastermind, powered by OEM Interactive. Today, I have a couple of we'll call them cyber experts, and in the wake of the CDK attack that affected so many people, thousands of dealerships, and many thousands more people, as well as companies attached to those dealerships, like David's company. It affected a lot of people, and so we wanted to get some more information out there to hopefully mitigate any damage that may be coming forward, either from this attack or preventing an attack in your future. And so, David and Ted, welcome to the Fixed Ops Mastermind. Good to have you both back.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate it, Dave.
And so let's talk a little bit about just what kind of threats are out there. I know I was at a dealership group that went through a ransomware attack that was no fun. CDK just went through the same type of attack. But we also hear a lot of about phishing attacks and things like that. And so let's start with a little bit about the types of attacks that are out there. Ted?
Yeah, sure. I appreciate the opportunity, Dave, to share. You know, realistically, in today's world, there are numerous attacks. I think you kind of touched on several of them. Ransomware, phishing, business email compromise is a huge one. Unfortunately, so many of the challenges really are us as the users. The technology is fantastic, but we are the problem. I think some of the things, even most recently with the CrowdStrike issue, I think that when it all is said and done and you look at it, somebody probably clicked something they shouldn't. And it wasn't so much about the technology, but it was about the processes. What I feel is so important in the automotive industry and every industry is how you're trying to prevent the boom from occurring in the first place, right? And the boom can be whatever you define it. It could be the attack, it could be the actual entrance of a criminal, or it could be the time that the door is left open. But if you will spend your time and energy on protecting that, and that includes the human person or the human element of it, you're going to prevent a lot of headache.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I think, it's such an important thing. User training and awareness, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing. Within our company, we're constantly doing phishing simulations on our employees, so we send out, fake emails on purpose so that we can identify who's going to be the one to click on it. And then, if they click on something they're not supposed to, it takes them through a series of trainings that they have to do to help educate them on what not to click on, what to look for in an email and everything like that. So I couldn't agree with Ted more. I think, the biggest part is, training in awareness, right? And it's not just for business, it's for personal too. I mean, that training and that knowledge benefits them at home too. And when they're on their home computer and, their family computer. So I think it's really good to make sure everybody's aware. And, the other thing is to, and I'm sure we've all seen this in the dealership or any business, right? Where somebody's password is just password 123, right? Or it's written on a sticky note right beside the computer, or it's underneath the keyboard. So, password complexity, I think, is very important, making sure passwords are changed on a regular basis. And then that goes along the education part too, making sure your users are educated not to be giving their passwords out to somebody else, or putting it on the bottom of their keyboard or anything like that. So
yeah, and so you mentioned on the personal side of things. So my phone is through AT&T, which it just came out not that long ago that AT&T had this massive data breach. And I thank them for all the spammers that they gave my phone number to. My phone rings constantly now, and it's always that guy Spam Risk that's calling me. But like I see texts that come through that say, hey, I'm XYZ. I need you to do me a favor and do whatever right away, right? And it's a text
buy
message.
some gift cards for you, right, or something like that.
Yeah, and it's like it's from the CEO of OEM Interactive, and I'm like, okay, I know he would never, never even come this channel to get this done, right? Maybe he would ask me to do what the task was, but he wouldn't come that channel. And so are those phone things, the text messages and things coming through, as dangerous as like the phishing emails that come through?
I would say it depends. The answer is probably. You think about that scenario, and we've read some studies that Microsoft says 99.9% of the breaches could be solved with two-factor. That may or may not be true, and as AI enhances, I think it's going to be probably less true. But think about it conceptually, right? The two-factor mentality is to trust nothing, but to verify through a second factor. So if you were to receive that text message, rather than engaging or replying, first look at signs of things that stand out. A text message that is not the CEO's from OEM Interactive is step one, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, we're all in a hurry. And so they are preying on us being in a hurry and making mistakes. So if you do get that text message, the best way to do is to call your CEO with the number that you have pre-programmed into your cell phone, or use another way to communicate and say, hey, is this you? Because they're continuing to get better, where these things look so real that you can look at it and say it checks all the boxes. So that extra verification outside of that communication is really, to me, the level of world that we're living in right now. You just can't trust anything anymore.
And some of that goes along with what I train our employees to do, because I get those text messages too. It's like they get something. Hey, David, I know you're in a meeting, or it'll look like it comes from me, right? And it says, can you run out and get these gift cards for me and then deliver them, or whatever the case may be. And, fortunately, we've done enough education on that to, like you said, look for, it's not coming from my phone number, right? It's not coming from a Colorado area code, all that kind of stuff. So I think, a lot of it plays into common sense too, right? On that respect, if it sounds weird, it's probably weird, right? So.
Absolutely. And like you said, Ted, trust but verify, right? So, and that's just go back to if that is the channel that you're normally communicating on, then start another communication to verify that before you do anything with it. But I think it goes back to the old adage of if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. If it seems wrong, it probably is. Right? If it seems like an odd request, then you probably shouldn't do it. So where are these threats coming from? I know with the CDK attack, it was from Russia. Am I right on that? Somewhere outside the U.S. So I know these attacks are probably coming from all over the world, but what can we do to help prevent those types of things? If they're from all over the world, right? It's not like the FBI is going to go next door and lock somebody up who's, hacking people from his computer.
Yeah, I do think nation states, there's real threat there from countries that hate us and countries that have a lot of incentive to impact us. But this is big business, right? So there's a lot of money to be made, and it's really coming from all angles. I was at a conference last week. It was a security conference, and they shared the MGM hack that happened not long ago and really walked through the steps of it all. And they had traced it back to a Russian organization. But really what happened is they partnered with an organization called Scattered Spider. And Scattered Spider were a bunch of 19 to 22-year-olds that were in the United States and the UK that were really good at social engineering. So together, through a collaboration, they used their ability to speak in a language that sounded like just anybody else and called MGM, and within 10 minutes had access that they should have never been granted. So you think about MGM, right? MGM has the power to put in the best technology and the best solutions known to man. But in that case, They were social engineered to bypass it all. So again, I don't want to take away from the importance of strong technology. It's very, very important. But to me, and I think David mentioned it earlier, education is critical. Stop, think, this just doesn't seem right. And we have to remember that it's big business, right? MGM lost a lot of money over that, and there's more to be made. So they're not going to stop. The criminals are not going to stop.
Yeah. So the last show that we did on cyber attacks, which was before the CDK thing happened, it was brought up of social engineering, and to my naive person was like, oh, I don't think you're going to find a job posting for a social engineer. And it's apparently is an actual real job. But it's those kind of things, right? Where like somebody's on a social media site, Facebook, and there's one of those little quizzes, right? That your friend sent you to take, right? And it's all the stuff that they're using to social engineer you. Right, it's your favorite color, it's your cat's name, it's the street you grew up on. It has all these little things that they make into these cute little quizzes, and they're just taking all that information and going, "Thank you very much. At some point, I'll use this against you," right?
Mm-hmm.
And that part of it, that it is that organized, right, and that patient, that they're willing to wait. They can take all the time they need. And with the MGM attack, right? Obviously, it affected MGM's business, but it also affected a whole bunch of other people not attached to MGM, even outside of business, right? People trying to just get vacations done and things, right? There's people that probably planned that trip for years that got messed up because of things like that.
Yeah, and I think, part of it is continuing to raise awareness like you're doing. And David, I appreciate you continuing to raise awareness here in this environment. But if you think about all of the the guidelines, they're FEC, right?
Yeah, FTC.
Yeah. The guidelines came out. Car dealerships were talking about the impact that it would have. But quite honestly, those are really good practices. And putting ourselves in that type of posture is what protects, because it's about layers, right? You want layers to be able to have to work through before they ever get to that crown jewel, whatever it is that's most critical to your business. And so continuing to raise awareness, we all have to acknowledge that it can and likely will happen to us. The days of thinking nobody wants my data, nobody wants my information, they're gone.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing right there is I think a lot of people have had that mentality, especially prior to the CDK thing. But it is that mentality that it's not going to happen to me, right? That I'm not important enough. Hey, the PIN to my phone is 1234. Again, going back to the password policy, password 123, login as me, whatever the case may be. I think that is the mindset that's changing, especially after something is big as this. And then, CrowdStrike followed right behind it is, I think making sure people are aware that it could happen to you,
When I think the CrowdStrike instance and even CDK shows the impact that it has on the entire world now. We are so interconnected that one glitch like that, and I heard only 1% of CrowdStrike's base actually got that update. So think about it, if it would have been 5% or 20%, right?
Yeah. I was in New York when that happened. And I was walking, going through Macy's, all the monitors were blue screen, going through the airport, everything's blue screen. So, to your point, I guess if that was only 1%, that's a huge impact.
Massive.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard that's amazing, considering that took the whole news cycle, right? That's all they talked about was that, and that was only 1% of it. That's frightening, quite frankly.
Yeah.
David, you talked about passwords a couple of times. I worked at a dealership group. This was not the dealership group that got ransomwared, but their customer Wi-Fi password was 1 through 9. numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? For the customer Wi-Fi, the admin password to get into the system was 9 through 1 going the other way. Super secure.
It's scary how much of that stuff is out there,
Yeah.
So
and Dave, you and I in a conversation that we had, I can only think of one dealer or group that I worked with that I didn't at some point get the admin password to be able to access way more stuff than I ever should have been able to access.
That's another really important thing too. I mean, one, password sharing. So, we've been in business for 30 years plus. So these things just happen over time. But where somebody doesn't know how to set you up a login for whether it be CDK, Reynolds, whatever the platform is. So they say, hey, just use my password to do what you need to do, right? And it's like, well, this has everything. Or you're set up with a password into a portal of some sort, and instead of them taking the time to granularly give you access to only what you need, they just click all the boxes, and then when you log in, you have more of that access than you need. To your point, right? So I think it's really important that not just in the auto industry, but every industry. I mean, we, again, not to keep belaboring it, but we all just need to pay attention to not giving somebody too much access and not sharing passwords, and whatever the case may be. So
yeah, and that the sharing of passwords like that for me, because I was running the store, and there were certain things, and that it was usually something like that, right, where there were things that were coming up where you had to add somebody into something or whatever, and through building a relationship, right, through social engineering, I build enough of a relationship with the admin person that they go, you know what, just take the password so that you can get this done, so you don't have to keep contacting me for this. And that's how I'd end up with a password that I shouldn't have, and access that I didn't need. I don't know enough about computers to give me that kind of access to stuff.
Well, first I went to fortune.com. It's 1% of all Windows devices. So I don't want to be fake news. 1% of Windows devices is what it was. But I talk a lot about cyber hygiene. I want you to think your password as your toothbrush. When's the last time you shared your toothbrush or somebody asked you for it? We need to really get to that point. It needs to be that important.
Wow, I like thinking about it that way. That
you're not going to share toothbrushes, right? I mean, I'm
definitely not.
Do that. So we need passwords to be the same way.
Excellent, I like that. And so I think you guys have kind of covered this, but are these attacks preventable? Do we ever get to the point where it seems like there's more and more and more and more and more of them, right? But do we ever get to the point where we've done enough that that they don't happen?
David, you want to field that?
Sure. I'll start with it. I mean, I don't know that you're going to get to the point where they're 100% preventable. I mean, I think, like I said, I think education is very important. Keeping your softwares up to date, keeping your firmware on your routers, Windows updates, all that stuff is very important to stay on top of the latest vulnerabilities that could be out there. But I mean, how often are you doing Windows updates? I mean, it's how frequently do new software patches come out? It's there's always a new threat out there that's somebody's going to find a way to exploit. So I think compared with keeping all your systems up to date and everything like that, combined with training, is the best you can get. But and Ted, I don't know if you want to add to that, but I mean, you're more of an expert on that probably than I am. But what's your thought?
No, I agree 100%. And I think it's all about the low-hanging fruit, right? You want to make yourself, you just want to take away the easy things, right? Because the criminals, for the most part, are looking for easy targets. There are cases, obviously, where they'll go after somebody maliciously. But if you can eliminate that, you are so far ahead of the game. And that's step one. The others is, cyber insurance is a real important factor. Every business needs to really look hard at that, because at the end of the day, things do happen. Nothing is foolproof. The only thing is foolproof is to go out in the wilderness and disconnect, be off the grid entirely, and then you're safe, maybe. Then you've got wolves and other things to think about. But in today's world, if you're connected, you're at risk. So you need to have that buffer. You need to have the, oh my gosh, everything was done right. And I think that's important too, right? You need to have some checks and balances on how to prove that you did your due diligence. And I will give cyber insurance companies credit now. They are really starting to begin to enforce what I think they probably should have a decade ago, but they have learned and they are course correcting. So to have that in place, I want to stress the importance of that is a way to protect yourself when something does happen.
Right. And so that takes us through segment 1. We'll move into segment 2, which is what do the cyber attacks affect. But before we do that, it is our quote of the week. And that is brought to you by Parts Edge. If you spend more money on coffee than on IT security, you will be hacked. And that is from Richard Clark. And Ted, you kind of alluded to that, like oh, we don't need to spend money on that. And David, you mentioned keeping the most recent software updates and things. I've been in some dealerships that are they're working on little more than Commodore 64s. So, you need to put some money into that to prevent what we saw happen a few weeks ago. And so in thinking about the CDK ransomware attack, obviously we know that it affected CDK in a big way. It affected a bunch of dealers. But what we don't really hear about is all the other collateral damage that happened to all the other businesses like yours, David, that are serving those dealerships, right? Because for some of those businesses, they were effectively out of business, right? CDK was down, and that's what 95 or so % of their dealers are on. They're out of business, and there's not much that that is talked about with that. And so, Dave, if you could talk a little bit about how it affected your business, and I know you're spread out through a lot of dealerships, so it didn't shut you down, but it certainly had a big effect.
Oh yeah, it definitely had a huge effect on us. About 600 of our clients are on CDK, so you can imagine that's little under half of our dealerships, right? And we weren't doing any work for any of them. So but so that impacts our business for sure. So if we're not doing work for these dealerships, first, I mean, our company's not generating any money, right? So that's no income for our business. But I think more importantly, or just as important, everybody throughout the dealership is incentivized, right? And for us, it's service work. So if you can think about it in terms of, we're not able to log into the DMS to pay the technicians, right? So the technicians aren't getting any money put on their paychecks because we can't flag them because the DMS is down. I talked to so many dealerships and said, what are you doing to compensate for this? How are you paying your technicians? I mean, it was the end of a quarter too. So, I mean, that was another, thing. So we just had this cliff right at the end of a quarter. So, from pay plans from service directors to service managers, I mean, not putting that money on the books and not being able to do business had a huge impact on so many people's, paychecks. Mm-hmm. So, and again, for our business, I mean, the amount of work that went into just our recovery for 600 stores, the portion of our business that routed all the CDK business, if you will, we had to completely rebuild it. I mean, any of the machines that touched any of those networks, we did away with. We did fresh installs. We wanted to make sure that, as we started reconnecting to dealerships, it wasn't going to have any kind of impact on our network or any of our other clients. So that's another way it impacted us, is we had, our IT departments, our warranty administrators, our team leaders, they're all working, long days, 14, 16 plus hours, to try to recover from this as quickly as possible. So.
Yeah. And it's those kind of things that don't get talked about, right? Like there's people out there that are going to look and go, yeah, well, it's CDK, right? So big deal. They paid whatever it was, $20 million, $30 million ransom. It's a drop in the bucket to them. Yeah, that's for them. But there's all these other people that are attached to that, that are affected by that, right? Like you mentioned the technicians inside the dealership. David, your people, I'm sure, work on some kind of commission with the amount of warranty that they process, that now they're not processing warranty. Yep. It affected their lives because they're working 16, 18-hour days to get you back up and running, to get things. And that happened across thousands of other businesses that were connected to this. There's a lot of costs there that aren't accounted for. And, yes, maybe CDK could afford 30 million. That's not really the point, whether a company can afford it or not. You still have those ancillary costs that many other people paid. And those are the things that the dealerships need to be paying attention to as they're moving forward, right? Because you have those costs that are there. If something does happen and you do get a cyber attack, you're not paying just once. You're paying that, whatever that ransom is. You're paying for all the time that you're down. You're paying for whatever of your team that leaves because they just can't afford to be there during that time. There's a lot of other things to consider.
And for the dealers too, I think there's a lot of cost in monetarily and time wise, because as they're coming back online and they're allowing vendors like ourselves to reconnect, they're maybe putting other things in place, maybe again financially or just from a time perspective. So they're reviewing their policies, they're reviewing their security measures, and they're changing them as we're going forward through this. So so there's a lot of recovery.
Yeah, and so less cars were probably sold, and customer impact. I mean, there's a lot of those elements too that aren't really spoken about.
Yeah, there's a lot of customers that were impacted and I know there were a lot of dealerships out there that not that there weren't guys like me who had actually handwritten service, right? So, they've never done anything in the department other than on a computer. And
imagine all those Gen Zers that saw somebody grab a pen and they're like, "Whoa, what's that?
What's a pen? What is that?" Yeah, it's. I mean, unfortunately, it's a real thing, and like from a parts perspective, you go to those you're at a parts department at a larger dealership, and I mean the places are massive. They might know where, a third of the parts are, but even if they can look them up, if they don't have a way to figure out where it is in the department, it's difficult to go and even retrieve that part for you. So just a lot that gets affected. And so let's talk a little bit about some, it's not hardware, software stuff, firewalls, other cybersecurity tools and things that people can use. How effective are they? First of all, if we take out the people portion of that, how effective are they? And what should dealerships be looking at?
Well, I would say they're highly effective. The people part is really the piece that in some ways I think is probably the least effective, right? So if you think about high-end protection systems that you might put on your home and all of these different layers, if the person turns them all off and lets the criminal in the front door, all of it's irrelevant. And so I think, from a technology perspective, it's about layers. So you're going to put your perimeter, the firewall, you're going to make sure that you have all of your endpoints protected. Well, how do you know that you have all of your endpoints protected? Well, you need to have inventory asset management. You need to understand the entire attack vector. How large is it? What all touches it? Are people using devices that shouldn't be in our environment? And so that is how you start to get ahead of it, is identify all of the attack points and then implement layers of protection, both at the agent level and at the perimeter. But then again, that human element is the last piece, and to really think about, okay, something has gotten through all of these layers. It's gotten through a firewall. It's gotten through an agent. It's gotten through email protection. And it gets down and it looks legit. That's the last piece. But the protection as a whole, if you layer it like that, is fairly reliable as long as you keep it current and patched and updated.
And David, you mentioned earlier using VPNs. For those out there that don't know what that is, just a brief explanation of it. You don't have to be too technical about it, but
yeah, that's just a way for, from remote location to be able to join the dealership's network. So it's called a virtual private network, and it's just an encrypted, secure way to basically get on the dealership's network so that we can, for our purposes, get to CDK, get to the DMS, whatever the case may be. So that's what allows us to get on their network to access, those tools. When it comes to that, I mean, speaking to Ted's, making sure all your measures are in place and stuff. I mean, there's certain levels of VPN access that can be granted. So, we always like to make sure, our clients are doing like an access control list or something like that, to where when we're getting on their network, we don't just have carte blanche access to everything on their network, right? I don't need to see where all your computers and be able to access them, right? I'm interested in getting to that one IP address. So, there's security measures that a dealership or a network administrator or system administrator can put in place so that when we access their network, we're very secure in what we're accessing when we join. So.
Yeah, and I think that, principle of least privileges comes into play, right? So you only need to give as much access as you need to do your job. And every organization needs to analyze that from top to bottom. And unfortunately, the CEOs that think they should have all of the power and all of the authority really shouldn't, because there's no reason to, and we've got the biggest target. So David, just like you as the president, you're sitting there where you need only enough access that you need to do what you need because you've got a target on.
Yep.
That's an interesting thought, that because it would only make sense to me, right, if you're at the head of the company, that you have all the access.
Well, you want it, right? I mean, you own the company, so you should have everything. I mean, naturally you want to, but you're right. I mean, that does paint a bigger target. So,
Absolutely.
Yep. And so, what steps should a dealership take as soon as they realize that there was some kind of a cyber attack, cyber incident, whatever it should be called? What's the first things that they should be doing?
Well, I mean, the first thing I always hear is unplug everything, right? But it's not that easy anymore, right? Who was attacked? In this case, is it a third-party vendor that's attacked, or is it you that's under attack? You've got to identify the point of entry, and then you've got to try to segment it off as quickly as possible. So I jokingly say unplug, but you've got to isolate. And if it's a massive, your entire organization's under attack, you got to get systems offline as quickly as possible and really get a cyber professional involved that can try to determine the point of entry, what the damage is. But we've got to be willing to take your systems offline. And I think in today's world, there is a PR side of it too that's extremely important. People are demanding transparency. We are being regulated to transparency. So I think having a strategic plan beforehand for both of those, what is your incident response plan? But also, how are you going to educate and inform the public, your clients, whatever it is, your customers? All of that has to be done now. All of that, and that's part of the guidelines. Those are part of the steps that you need to be putting in place. Is who's going to do what and what's the process.
And so with notifying customers and things, I'm sure there's hundreds of pages in those regulations about what you have to do, when you have to do it, and that type of thing. But generally, when do customers need to be notified about it? I mean, I know that my vehicles have been worked on at dealerships that use CDK over the years. I haven't gotten anything. I mentioned the AT&T breach, and AT&T. I don't remember when that breach was, but I also got something in the mail the other day that talked about a data breach from 2018 that said you were involved in that. And I'm like, you're just letting me know now? It's 6 years ago.
Well, that's just in case you want to know. Everybody has to make the determination of what they're comfortable with, what they're under compliance to do. I think anytime you have proof that there has been a breach and there is potential for that information to be breached, you need to notify people. A breach and a possible entry are two different things, and so you have to investigate and identify those. You don't want to shout from the rooftops too quickly, only to find out it was a false alarm or it really was a quickly mitigated issue. But you have to make those predetermined ideas on the front end, so you're not responding. Having that plan is critical.
Right, that makes sense. And so, how do we talked a little bit about costs earlier? How does a dealership justify the cost of putting in some advanced cybersecurity measures, and whether that's hiring someone like you, Ted, your company to come in and do things, whether it's actually hiring IT people to work at the dealership, or whether it's just saying, hey, we're going to buy this software package that's going to protect us. How do they measure that against the risks or loss that they could take in a cyber attack?
I think it's a cost of doing business in today's world. I think that technology needs to be very high in the amount that you spend compared to revenue. And if you're shorting yourself on that, or you're really trying to cut corners in that, it likely will haunt you. It likely will cost you more in the long run. You have to really think about when, and hopefully you don't, but when I have an attack, how am I going to respond? What costs? What's going to happen if I'm down for a week? How about if I'm down for a month? How about if I lose data? And then you start working your way backwards. You have to determine how much your business can justify being down, for how long, and how much data you could lose. And some organizations might say, I can only be down for 2 hours and I can't lose any data. Guess what? That's going to cost a lot more than if you can be down for a week and maybe lose a couple days worth of data. So again, the layers, ransomware, unfortunately, now you've got ransomware as a service. So they will literally recruit people to be on the sales front for them, essentially. So you've got to be able to restore your data, and the backups have to be segmented so that they can't be encrypted. So that is absolutely important. If you can't recover, that's just bad, right? So that's step one. And then the others are beginning to determine how quickly do you need to know in order to accomplish those objectives. And again, the faster you need to be able to know, the more you're going to have to invest.
I guess I would add to that too. I think unfortunately, I hate that anybody had to be the one to go through it, but coming out of the CDK incident, I think that really is justification to everybody that we really need to pay attention to our security, right? So, it certainly did for me. I mean, it causes you to go back and look at everything that you don't look at on a regular basis. I mean, spending money in IT, unfortunately, isn't all that exciting usually, right? I mean, it's an intangible thing that you're getting, but it's like Ted said, it's very important that you put that at the forefront, because at the end of the day, we work in a really technology-driven world. I mean, not just CDK being down, but if you can think about it, what if the internet goes down? I mean, so many of our businesses run on technology, run on the web. So that's really worth investing in for your business, I think, first and foremost. So.
Yeah, and so you're right. Like, the IT stuff is not something, and it's something that's not necessarily seen in things. It's kind of like putting tires on your car.
Yeah.
Right. Even as a guy in the automotive business, I do not like buying tires for my car. Right. But try and drive your car without tires, and try and run your business without technology. Neither of those work very well for the business that we're all in right now. And so this brings us to our stat of the week. It is brought to you by Petra Automotive Products. A data breach costs $4.45 million on average, and that is from the IBM Cost of Data Breach Report of 2023. That's a pretty large number. It's small consider when you think about some of the ransomware numbers that you've heard kicked out there, but it's not always big fish that they're going after, right? So 4.45 million is a lot of money that they're taking out of the economy. And so segment 3, we're going to talk about what the future holds. And so let's talk scary future first. What do you guys see becoming more prominent, and whether it's automotive specific or world specific, doesn't matter, as far as cyber threats in the future?
AI-based attacks. I think that everything that we've known is about to change. When we had a certified ethical hacker first come on staff, probably 8 years ago, he would talk to me about, a 20 character password will take 18 trillion years it's never possible, all this stuff. None of that's true anymore. With AI, everything we've known is gone. And so even a 20 character password, the technology is continuing to advance that even it's not safe. So again, it's about layers. It's about good hygiene. It's about making sure that you are taking care of your passwords and your credentials and layering everything. And it's kind of scary when you think about, but everything that we've known is about to get harder. We are fighting a battle that now with AI has really intensified, because we're using AI for good, but the bad guys are using it for evil. And it's a pretty tough war.
Thoughts, David?
I would agree with Ted. I mean, it's kind of scary to even think about what the applications could be for AI in a negative way. But as things evolve, I mean, not just AI, but I think the more complex and the more creative the bad actors get. I mean, it just we need to, as businesses, we need to stay on top of, again, going back to the education and the having everything up to date, backed up. I mean, that's just be as safe as you can. So.
And I think, putting in that proactive mindset for dealerships to run some tabletop exercises. I know that seems like costly. How am I able to do that? I'm too busy. I'm overloaded. Being able to set aside some time, whether you recruit professionals to assist you or whether you just do it, it will pay off tenfold if you really have your ducks in a row in the event of a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, coming from when I was at the group that got hacked, which is, this group no longer exists, there was nothing that we did ahead of that to talk about. There was no, there were no, David, you talked about fake phishing emails and things that you do to train your staff and things. There was none of that came through. And if there was any training in the onboarding about cybersecurity, it was little enough that I cannot remember what it was at all. Right. Other than some people telling you don't click on links, don't click on links in emails. Right. That was about the height of the security, which from what I understand is how the attack happened. So no, even though they said it, somebody still did it.
Right.
So, and so what can dealerships do to stay ahead of these emerging threats? And I think one of the obvious things is what I kind of just said was having better training on it.
I think training, but unfortunately, my experience in the auto industry is that a lot of the systems are really antiquated, I guess, and not kept up. I mean, when you go into a dealership and they're on Windows 8 or whatever, right? And they haven't done any security updates, and I think it's just really important for no matter if it's a standalone dealership or a dealer group, to look at your systems. And again, it's not a sexy thing to spend money on, but you need to. And unfortunately, it's something you don't really want to look at until something happens to cause you to look at it. But I think this is a really important thing that everybody should look at what they have running. Look at, the latest firmware update on their firewall. Is it from 2000, or is it up to date with the latest no patches? Are you on the latest operating systems from Windows that get all the security updates and that kind of thing? I think it's a huge opportunity. So again, I think the most important thing dealerships can do is take a look at what they're currently doing, what the state of their systems are, and maybe hire a company that can come in and help them do an evaluation. I mean, what you don't know is what you don't know, right? So,
so how much danger is there from third parties that are tying in? Like David, your company ties into dealership systems, right? How much do dealerships need to pay attention to those companies that they're hiring to do a job for them, and how they're tying in, and what their security is? How do they?
I think they need to pay a lot of attention to that. I mean, I think we really, as the FTC guidelines came down, our company really focused on making sure we meet all the same compliance guidelines that a dealership has to meet. Because we're joining their system on a daily basis, right? We're working with them at that capacity. So even though we're not a financial institution or considered one like dealerships are, we took the same security measures to make sure that we complied with all those. We have our incident response plans. We've all of our IT security documented. So the shorter answer to your question is, I think that if a dealership is considering doing business with any vendor, including ourselves, do your due diligence. Ask for the information. Ask for proof that you have cybersecurity insurance. We're insured up to, I think, $10 million of cybersecurity insurance. So make sure that your vendor is responsible that way. Make sure that they are taking security measures seriously on their end too. So I think that's very important to pay attention to for dealerships. So
retweet. Perfect. Couldn't have said it better.
So is it still a tweet now that it's not Twitter?
I don't know. Re-X doesn't sound right.
Is it a re-X? I'm gonna work on that tomorrow. I'm gonna rename it and make it go viral.
You could X Elon, I guess. Maybe he can.
That's right. All right, and as we get to a close here, if you had to take 3 things that a dealership should do today, it's 5/19. Yep. Most of them are closing. If tomorrow, 3 things that they have to do tomorrow to better secure themselves, what would those 3 things be?
I'll go first. I would say that the CEO needs to ask their IT department to be able to tell them and show them, can they restore from whatever it is that desired point is. Show me you can restore from last night. Show me a patch report, and I need to know that this is up to date and current. And then lastly, show me what we're doing about fish testing or training. And I'm not saying we got that covered. I'm saying a CEO or a president of the dealership needs to say, show me.
I'd say Ted and I are speaking the same message here. I mean, basically, evaluate where you're at right now. So whether that's through asking for the reporting and showing you the proof, know where you're at today. Know what your vulnerabilities are, because you can't start fixing them until you know what they are. So I would say that's very important. And then again, just to echo the same thing from Ted, we do very incremental backups. So our critical systems are backed up, I think, every hour. So, we can restore back to, some of our critical applications back to just an hour ago. So I think backups are very important. So, being able to, if something gets compromised, being able to take it down and restore it back from, even if it's a day ago. I mean, most companies can probably lose a half a day or a day's worth of work, but I think that's paramountly important to make sure that you have something to restore back to. So, and then again, just keep echoing training. That's the biggest thing that we're focused on here. I do think that personally, probably phishing is probably the most vulnerable part. I mean, if somebody gets an email and it takes them to a web portal that looks like what they're used to logging into, and they put in their username and password, and all of a sudden, whoops, that's not even the right website. You've given your credentials to somebody. So very important to make sure that you have a training program in place to make sure that you're educating your employees. So
definitely.
All right, some great info there, and luckily this is available for people to replay so that they can go back and get those 6 items to be able to help their stores. David and Ted, thank you so much for joining us today. A lot of great information. There's a lot of danger out there. And we need to remain vigilant so that everybody in the automotive industry can continue to feed their families.
Yep.
That's at the end of the day, that's what we're all trying to do, right? And
Yep.
The bad actors are trying to take that away. So thank you very much for sharing your knowledge, and we will see everybody next week.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dave. Nice meeting you, Ted.
You too.